Rain drummed on the roof of the old pickup in which Evelyn Lewis was nervously tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. She was parked outside a small, one-story house on the outskirts of Houston, gathering her courage for an important conversation. Her father had never approved of her relationship with Jack, and now she was going to have to ask him for help. Evelyn took a deep breath, grabbed a shabby file folder, and sprinted out into the rain. Soaking wet in the few seconds it took her to run to the porch, she knocked on the door. Robert Lewis opened it almost immediately, as if he'd been expecting her visit. His dark, wrinkled face remained impenetrable, but there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Evie," was all he said, stepping aside. Evelyn walked into the familiar living room, where nothing had changed since her mother's death. The same worn chairs, the same old TV, the same family pictures on the walls. "Dad, I need help," she began without preamble, shaking raindrops from her curly hair. Robert sank heavily into the chair across from his daughter. "Is this about Jack?" His voice sounded tired. "I found a good lawyer," Evelyn said hurriedly, pulling papers out of a folder. "He says there's a chance of parole. Jack was given 5 years, but he's already served almost 2. He's on good behavior, he's studying—" "That's enough," Robert raised his hand. "I know why you're here. You need money." Evelyn stopped talking and lowered her eyes. Waitressing at a roadside cafe wasn't the kind of job that would pay for a decent lawyer. "Dad, please," her voice trembled. "He's changed, really. He realized a lot of things in prison." Robert shook his head. "Evie, my girl, do you remember what he was in jail for?" Of course she remembered. It happened 18 months ago. The police had busted a place where Jack and his buddies were dealing heroin. Evelyn hadn't known about his business then, or preferred not to. He always said he worked part-time jobs here and there, sometimes bringing gifts and bragging about his connections. And then he'd been taken away in handcuffs, and she'd been left alone in their rented apartment with an empty refrigerator and unpaid bills. He was just in bad company, Evelyn said, what she'd been repeating to herself all along. But now he realizes he made a mistake. "My girl," Robert rubbed his temples. "It's not a mistake. He didn't take a wrong turn by accident. He made a conscious choice to sell poison to people." "Daddy!" Evelyn's voice filled with tears. "I love him. I'm so lonely without him." Robert looked at his daughter for a long time. She had once been a cheerful girl, dreaming of going to college and becoming a nurse. Then she met Jack Nelson, and everything went wrong. Dropped out of school, got a job as a waitress so she could spend more time with this guy. And now she's sitting in front of him, slumped, with a worried look in her eyes and shaking hands. "How much do you need?" he finally asked. Hope flashed in Evelyn's eyes. "5,000, she said. "The lawyer wants 3,000 up front, and the rest can be paid in installments." Robert got up and went to the old secretary in the corner of the room, pulled out a checkbook. "You know your mother would be against it," he said as he wrote the check. "She'd say that guy wouldn't do you any good." "Mom would understand," Evelyn said quietly. Robert handed her the check. 5,000. I don't want you to pay in installments and worry. But Evie," he put his hands on her shoulders, "this is the last time. If he gets you in trouble again, I can't help you. My security pension is not a rubber band." Evelyn hugged her father, resting her face on his shoulder. "Thank you, Daddy. Everything's going to be all right, you'll see." Jack had changed. "God willing." Robert sighed. "God willing." The courtroom was half empty on this weekday afternoon. Evelyn sat on the bench, clutching her purse nervously. Next to her was her father, scowling and taciturn. He had insisted on attending the hearing. The lawyer Evelyn had hired was younger than she had expected, a trim black man of 35, in an impeccable suit and with confident manners. He greeted them briefly before they started and said the odds were good. Jack was led into the hall accompanied by a guard. He looked thinner in his prison robe than Evelyn remembered, but he kept a straight face. When their eyes met, he smiled slightly and nodded. The hearing lasted about an hour. The lawyer presented the court with evidence of Jack's reform, reports on his behavior in prison, certificates of completion of educational programs, testimonials from the prison psychologist. Then Jack himself took the stand, talking about how he realized his mistakes and wants to start his life anew. "Your Honor, I understand that I committed a serious crime." His voice sounded sincerely remorseful. But those 2 years in prison have changed me. I've seen where the life I've led leads. Now I have plans to get an honest job, maybe continue my education. And I have support. He looked at Evelyn. My girlfriend has been waiting for me all this time. I don't want to let her down again. The prosecutor argued against parole, recalling the seriousness of the crime and Jack's previous convictions for minor offenses. But the judge, after reviewing all the materials, ruled in favor of release, with probation for 3 years and weekly meetings with a probation officer. Don't make me regret that decision, Mr. Nelson, the judge said, looking at Jack over his glasses. No, sir, Jack replied. Thank you for the chance. Evelyn could barely hold back tears of joy. She hugged the lawyer, then her father, who stood stony-faced, silently watching. Daddy, you see? Everything's going to be all right. Robert answered nothing, only put his hand on her shoulder. 2 days later, having completed all the necessary paperwork, Jack was released. Evelyn waited for him at the gate of the penitentiary, nervously adjusting her hair every few minutes. When Jack finally appeared, dressed in the regular clothes Evelyn had brought him the day before, she threw herself around his neck. He pulled her against him, breathing in the scent of her hair. You're free, she whispered. Thanks to you, he replied, kissing her. They stood hugging for a long time before getting into Evelyn's old pickup truck. Jack was silent on the way home, staring out the window at the Houston scenery whizzing by. It was as if the city had gotten brighter, noisier, bigger in the time he'd spent behind bars. Your father, did he help with the lawyer? Jack finally asked. Evelyn nodded. Yes, he gave the money, even though he was against it. I should thank him, Jack said, and prove that he didn't help for nothing. He invited us to dinner tonight, Evelyn replied. He said he wanted to talk. Jack frowned, but nodded. Okay, let's go. Robert Lewis's house greeted them with the smell of roasting and the sounds of jazz from an old radio. Evelyn knocked and entered uninvited, dragging Jack, who was clearly nervous. Robert came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel. His gaze, sliding over Jack, was unreadable. Good evening, sir, Jack said, extending his hand. Thank you for your help. I know you did it for Evelyn, but I'm still grateful. Robert shook the outstretched hand. Don't thank me, boy. Prove you're worth the money I spent, and the trust my daughter puts in you. I'll prove it, Jack replied gravely. I've changed, Mr. Lewis. Prison, it makes you rethink a lot of things. I hope so, said Robert. Now let's go to dinner. The roast will get cold. At dinner, the conversation didn't go well. Robert asked questions about Jack's plans, but he was evasive, saying he wanted to look around first, get used to the freedom, and then find a steady job. A buddy of mine has a machine shop, Robert said. I can talk to him. He needs an assistant. Thank you, sir, Jack replied. I'd like to give it a try. I don't know much about machines, but I'm willing to learn. It's all about willingness to work. Robert nodded. You can learn the rest. When dinner was finished, Robert asked Evelyn to help with the dishes, leaving Jack alone in the living room. In the kitchen, he said quietly to his daughter, I hope you're right about him, Evie, but be careful. People don't change as fast and as much as you'd like to believe. You just don't know him like I do, Evelyn replied stubbornly. He's a good man, Dad. He just stumbled, and now he'll have a chance to make it right. Robert sighed. God willing. Look, you know you can come to me if anything goes wrong, right? Anytime. I know, Dad. She kissed his cheek. But it's going to be okay, you'll see. When they returned to the living room, Jack was looking at the pictures on the mantelpiece. Is that your mom? He asked, pointing to a picture of a beautiful, dark-skinned woman with a smile like Evelyn's. Yes, Evelyn replied. She died when I was 16, cancer. I'm sorry, Jack said sincerely. Robert walked over and stood next to his daughter. She was an amazing woman, and she always wanted the best for Evie. There was an obvious implication in his words, but Jack pretended not to notice. Mr. Lewis, he said, turning to Evelyn's father, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I swear I've changed. All I want now is an honest life, a job, and to be able to take care of Evelyn. Robert looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Time will tell, boy, time will tell. On the way home, Evelyn was unaccustomedly silent. Jack took her hand. Hey, everything okay? Yeah, she smiled. I just can't believe you're back. That we're back together again. Believe it, baby, Jack said, kissing her fingers. And I'll keep my promise. No more drug dealing. Just an honest life. Evelyn sighed happily. Her life was finally getting better. Jack was back with her, and this time it would be different. It had been a month since Jack had come home. The small apartment they'd rented on the outskirts of Houston had been transformed. Jack had painted the walls, fixed a leaky faucet, even put together a new shelf for the kitchen. Evelyn couldn't be pleased with the changes. Jack met her after her shifts at the cafe, cooked her dinner, and was attentive and caring. But his job was not going to work. Her father's friend's auto shop was already full, and other places were not in a hurry to hire an ex-convict. I'll find something, Jack said, kissing the top of her head. The important thing is that we're together. That Thursday, Evelyn sat in the hair salon where her best friend Layla worked. Layla's last customer had already left, and the friends could talk quietly. I'm telling you, Layla, he's really changed. Evelyn smiled as she talked about Jack. You should see how much he cares about the house, about me. He's even trying to get along with Dad. Layla raised an eyebrow skeptically as she gathered up her combs and scissors. And he got a job? Evelyn's smile faded a little. Not yet, but he's looking. He doesn't come home until the evening, and he says he's been to a lot of places. Layla hummed, wiping the mirror. Where does he get his money from? For your bills, food, clothes? He had savings, Evelyn answered, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Savings? Layla interjected, turning to her friend. Evie, honey, he was in jail for 2 years. What kind of savings? Maybe from selling something. I don't know. Evelyn shrugged. What difference does it make? The main thing is that he gave up his old business. Layla sat down opposite her friend and took her hands. Look, I understand that you love him, but are you sure he's really changed? People don't change that fast, especially after prison. You don't even know him that well, Evelyn objected, taking her hands. You've only seen him a couple times, and that was a long time ago. But I know you, Layla said softly. I can see that you're willing to trust him no matter what. I've also seen how you suffered when he went to prison, how you worked 2 jobs to make ends meet because all the money went to the lawyer. Evelyn turned away from the window. Outside the window, cars whizzed by. Passers-by went about their business. Life went on as usual. He's changed, she repeated stubbornly. Give him a chance. Layla sighed. Okay, take me out to dinner sometime. Get reacquainted. Maybe I really am wrong. Evelyn brightened up. Great idea! How about this weekend? Jack was just saying he wanted to cook something special. Okay, Layla nodded, but her eyes remained serious. Just be careful, okay? If anything seems weird, don't turn a blind eye. Stop it, Evelyn laughed, standing up. It's going to be okay. I have to run. My shift is in an hour. Layla hugged her friend goodbye. Call me when you decide on dinner. Evelyn left the hairdresser's shop and headed for the bus stop. It took about half an hour to get to the cafe, and she liked to spend that time looking out the window and daydreaming. Right now, her thoughts were all about Jack and their future. Maybe he would get a job soon and they could think about kids. Evelyn had always wanted a big family. The shift at the cafe went as usual. Bustle, orders, tips. The owner, an elderly Mexican man named Don Ramon, appreciated Evelyn for her hard work and smile. The customers loved her too. She remembered the regulars by name, knew their favorite dishes. Evelyn returned home late, around 11 in the evening. Getting off the bus, she noticed an unfamiliar car in front of her house, a shabby black sedan. There were 2 men standing by the car, one of whom was gesticulating fervently at the other. When Evelyn came closer, they stopped talking and looked away. For a moment, she thought there was a flicker of, what? Anxiety? Irritation? Good evening, she said politely as she passed them. The men nodded but said nothing. Evelyn went up to the porch of her house and put the key in the lock. The door swung open before she could turn the key. Evie! Jack stood on the doorstep, his face a mixture of worry and impatience. You're late. I was worried. There was a rush of visitors, she explained as she entered the house. Who's this? Evelyn nodded toward the car, which was just starting up. Oh, that. Jack waved his hand. Just some old acquaintances. Just came by to say hello. At this hour? Evelyn was surprised, taking off her jacket. They're passing through town. Jack shrugged, helping her. They're leaving tomorrow, so we thought we'd stop by. Evelyn frowned. I'm surprised I haven't seen them before. They're friends of, Jack hesitated. We used to sit together, but they're out of the past too. One lives in Dallas now, has family there. The other one's in San Antonio, I think. What did they want? Evelyn went into the kitchen and turned on the kettle. Jack followed her. Nothing much, just to chat, to reminisce about old times. Jack, Evelyn turned to him, her arms crossed over her chest. You realize you're not allowed to socialize with your former cellmates, right? It's a condition of your parole. Hey, he came over and hugged her. Don't worry, it was just a chance meeting. I don't plan on keeping in touch with them. Evelyn sighed and rested her head on his shoulder. I'm sorry, I'm just afraid that something will go wrong, that you'll be taken away again. That won't happen, Jack said confidently, kissing the top of her head. I promise. By the way, he pulled away, looking into her eyes. How about we have dinner this weekend? Invite your friend Layla, maybe someone else? Evelyn brightened. I was just about to suggest that. Layla was talking about it today. That's great, Jack smiled. I'll make something special. He kissed her, and all worries receded into the background. Maybe Layla was right, and she should be more careful. But right now, in his arms, Evelyn didn't want to think about the bad. The following Wednesday, Evelyn returned home earlier than usual. Don Ramon had let her go early because of the few visitors. She decided not to call Jack, but to surprise him by buying his favorite pie at the bakery on the way home. And now she was looking forward to spending the evening together. As they approached the house, Evelyn noticed that the black sedan was parked outside the house again. Her heart clenched unpleasantly. What if Jack was lying to her? What if these people weren't just old acquaintances? Trying to keep her footsteps as quiet as possible, she stepped up onto the porch. Voices came from behind the loose door. He can't wait any longer, Jack, a low male voice said. The boss wants to see the results. I'm working on it, Jack replied. But you have to be careful. I'm being watched. The probation officer comes every week. That's not our problem, objected a second voice, more harsh. You took the merchandise, you have to give the money back. Or the merchandise. The merchandise? Money? What are they talking about? Evelyn froze, hesitant to enter. Give me another week, Jack insisted. I'm almost done with the new clients. It's going to be a big deal. A week, the first voice agreed. No more. And don't forget who helped you. I remember, Jack replied grimly. It will be done. Evelyn heard footsteps approaching the door and recoiled around the corner of the house. Two men, the same men she'd seen last time she'd been here, were coming out onto the porch. One of them was tall and thin, with nervous movements. The other was stocky, with a scar across his cheek. Don't let us down, Nelson, the stocky one said, and they headed for the car. Evelyn waited until the sedan pulled away before coming out of hiding. Her hands were shaking. The pie in the box seemed to get several times heavier. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, and pushed open the door. Jack stood in the middle of the living room, staring pensively into the space in front of him. When he heard her footsteps, he turned around abruptly. Evie? You're early today. Don Ramon let me go, she replied, trying to make her voice sound normal. Not many customers. Oh, I see, Jack smiled, but the smile didn't touch his eyes. What have you got there? Pie. Evelyn walked into the kitchen and put the box on the table. Your favorite, with apples. Thanks, baby. Jack followed her and hugged her from behind. You're the best. Evelyn tensed in his embrace. She wanted to ask about the visitors, about the strange conversation she'd overheard. But something stopped her. Fear? A reluctance to destroy the fragile happiness they'd built? Did someone come? She asked, pretending she'd only just noticed the signs of someone else's presence. 2 mugs on the coffee table. Jack hesitated for a moment. Oh, yeah, the guys came by. The same guys, remember? I told you, they're passing through town. Again? Evelyn broke free of his embrace and turned to him. Jack, You promised you wouldn't hang out with them. Evie, it's not what you think. Jack shook his head. They're really just old friends, nothing criminal. Really? There was doubt in her voice. Because I thought... What? Jack asked sharply. What did you think? Nothing. Evelyn turned away, starting to slice the pie. It's just weird that they come when I'm not home. Jack sighed. Look, I know what it looks like. But you have to trust me. I've really changed. I don't want to go back to that life. I don't want to go back to prison. I believe you, Evelyn said quietly, though doubt had already settled in her heart. Jack came over and gently turned her face to his. Hey, look at me. I love you, Evie. You're the best thing in my life. I will never do anything to keep us apart. Do you understand? She nodded, trying to smile. Jack kissed her, and for a while the worries receded. They ate dinner, watching TV, talking about their upcoming dinner with Layla. Just an ordinary evening of an ordinary couple. But when Jack fell asleep, Evelyn lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The words she'd overheard swirled around in her head. Merchandise, money, customers. What could it mean but one thing? Jack was dealing drugs again, and if that was true, they were both in danger. On Friday, Jack announced that he'd found a job. He came home excited with a bottle of champagne. Can you believe it, babe? I've been hired as a warehouse assistant, he announced excitedly. I start next week. That's wonderful. Evelyn was overjoyed. Where? What warehouse? A construction company south of town, Jack replied, uncorking the champagne. It's nothing special, but it's a start, and the pay's good. Evelyn threw herself around his neck. I'm so happy for you. I've also arranged for our dinner with Layla, Jack continued, pouring the champagne into glasses. Would Sunday be okay? I'll cook something special. Perfect, Evelyn smiled. It's Layla's day off. They clinked glasses, and for a moment everything seemed the same. Jack had found a job. They were planning dinner with friends. The future looked bright and clear. But on Saturday morning, when Jack left to take care of the formalities of his new job, Evelyn decided to do something she never would have done before. She began to search the house. First, she checked his things. Jackets, pants, shoes, nothing. Then she checked the drawers of the dresser where he kept his things, clean under the bed. Also nothing suspicious. Evelyn was beginning to calm down, thinking that her suspicions were groundless, when in the garage, in an old fishing box, she found an envelope with money. A lot of money. Several $1,000s in cash. Her heart raced. Where did Jack get that kind of money? There was only one way he could have earned it. Evelyn hastily returned the envelope to its place and went into the house, feeling the ground go from under her feet. In the evening, when Jack came home, she almost dared to ask him directly. But something in his eyes, some underlying anxiety, stopped her. Instead, she asked, "How did it go at work?" "Great," Jack smiled, but the smile didn't touch his eyes. "Everything's all set for Monday. Hey, why don't we invite your dad over for dinner too? I think he'd like to hear about my new job." "He can't," Evelyn shook her head. "He has a shift on Sunday." "That's too bad," Jack shrugged. "Another time then." Sunday morning, Jack went grocery shopping, leaving Evelyn to prepare the house for guests. She dusted, vacuumed, changed the tablecloths, but her thoughts were far away. What if Jack really was back in the drug trade? Tell his father? Go to the probation officer? Or talk to Jack himself? Her thoughts were interrupted by the phone ringing. It was Layla. "Evie, I have some bad news," she said. "I can't make it tonight. My mom fell and I think she broke her arm. I'm going to the hospital to see her." "Oh dear!" Evelyn gasped. "That's okay, of course dinner can wait. Keep me posted, okay? I will," Layla promised. "And Evie, be careful, okay?" "What are you talking about?" Evelyn wondered. "I don't know," Layla answered after a pause. "Just be careful." After the conversation, Evelyn stood for a while, staring thoughtfully at the phone. Was it just her imagination? Or did Layla's voice really sound alarming? And what did caution have to do with it? Jack returned from shopping and was disappointed to hear that dinner had been canceled. "It's a shame," he said, setting out the groceries. "I was hoping to get to know your friend better." "Some other time," Evelyn replied. I could call my dad, see if he could stop by after work. No need, Jack said quickly. I mean, he'll probably be tired after his shift. Why don't we just hang out? Evelyn nodded, but something in his hasty refusal made her uneasy. All day, Jack was unusually tense, checking his cell phone often, going out to smoke on the porch. By evening, her suspicions had only increased. Jack, she finally decided as they sat on the couch in front of the TV. I want to ask you something. What is it? He tensed, not looking at her. Those people who came over, are they really just old friends? Jack turned to her, his face impenetrable. Why do you think it's someone else? I don't know, Evelyn answered honestly. I just think you're hiding something. Evie, Jack took her hands. I told you, they're just old buddies. They just came by to say hello, reminisce. Nothing criminal. Really? Evelyn stared into his eyes. Because I overheard you two talking the other day about some merchandise customers. Jack's face changed for a moment, a flicker of anxiety, even fear. But he quickly pulled himself together. You misunderstood. We were talking about work. They helped me get a job at the warehouse. They know the boss. The product is building materials. Customers are the companies that buy them. Evelyn really wanted to believe him, but something in his eyes, in the tense line of his shoulders, said otherwise. Jack, if you're back, if you're doing what you were doing before, you can tell me. We'll figure something out. Baby, he pulled her to him. I'm not back on drugs. I swear to you. I got a normal job and we'll live like normal people. No crime. Evelyn nodded, snuggling into his shoulder. She really wanted to believe, but the doubts wouldn't leave her. You know what? Jack said suddenly, pulling away. Let's go to your father's house tomorrow. Let's show him that we're okay, that I kept my word and got a job. You did? Evelyn was happy. Do you want to go to Daddy? Of course I do, Jack smiled. After all, he helped me out. I want him to know that his money wasn't wasted. Evelyn hugged him, feeling her anxieties recede. Maybe she really is wrong. Maybe Jack was telling the truth. But that night, when Jack was asleep, she snuck back into the garage and checked the envelope with the money. It was there. But now it contained more bills, and there, next to the box, was a small bag that hadn't been there before. Evelyn opened it carefully and measured herself. Inside were small packets of white heroin powder. It had been 2 weeks since Evelyn had found the heroin in the garage, 2 weeks of agonizing doubt and fear. She hesitated to talk to Jack about her find. Something told her it could be dangerous. Instead, she called Layla, but she didn't pick up. She was busy with her mom, who was still recovering from her fracture. Jack started working at the warehouse, as promised. He left early in the morning, came back late at night, sometimes stayed for night shifts. Evelyn tried to believe that things had gotten better. As for the money and the drugs in the garage, maybe they were remnants of a past life. Maybe he really had quit. Thursday night, Evelyn finally got Layla on the phone. How's your mom? She asked, pressing the phone to her ear. Better, Layla answered. Although she's nagging me to fuss around her too much. How are you? How was dinner with Jack? We canceled it since you couldn't make it, Evelyn said. And then she said quietly, Layla, I need to talk to you. In person. There was concern in her voice. Is something wrong? Not on the phone, Evelyn answered quietly, even though Jack wasn't home. Can you do it tomorrow night? Jack's on the night shift, we can talk in peace. Sure, Layla agreed immediately. What time? 8 o'clock? He leaves at 6, so that'll give us plenty of time. I'll be there, Layla promised. Just hang in there, okay? Evelyn hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The decision to talk to Layla hadn't been easy for her. She felt like she was betraying Jack. But then again, hadn't he betrayed her by going back to the drug trade? The next day, Jack acted as usual, kissing her before he left, promising to be back in the morning, warning her that the phone might not work in the warehouse. Evelyn smiled and nodded, trying not to give away her anxiety. She spent the entire day stressed out. Twice she started to dial her father's number but stopped herself. What would she tell him? That she had only suspicions, no proof? What if she was wrong? At exactly 8 o'clock in the evening, there was a knock on the door. Evelyn opened it and saw Layla, in jeans and a plain t-shirt. with a worried expression on her face. "Come in." Evelyn let her friend inside. "Do you want some tea?" "Come on," Layla nodded, walking into the living room. "Evie, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Evelyn made tea and they sat down at the kitchen table. She told everything about the strange visits from Jack's ex-cellmates, about the overheard conversation, and finally about the money and drugs found in the garage. Layla listened without interruption, her face growing darker and darker. "Jesus, Evie," she said at last. "You have to get away from him, now." "Where?" Evelyn asked bitterly. "To her father's? What about Jack? Should I turn him in? He'll go back to prison." "Better him in jail than you in the grave," Layla said stiffly. "These people don't mess around, you know that, right? The drug trade is not a toy." Evelyn covered her face with her hands. "I know, but I can't just betray him." "He's already betrayed you." Layla put her hand on her friend's shoulder. "He promised to change and he lied. He's dealing drugs again, putting himself and you in danger." Evelyn raised her crying face. "What do I do, Layla?" "For starters," she said firmly, "make sure we're not wrong. Can you show me those drugs?" Evelyn nodded. "They're in the garage. Let's go." They went out the back door of the house, which led directly into the garage. Evelyn turned on the light and headed toward the corner where an old fishing box stood. "Right there," she said, pointing to the box. Layla stepped closer and Evelyn leaned over to open the lid. At that moment, the garage door leading to the street opened with a clatter. The girls turned around frightened. Standing in the doorway were two men, the same men Evelyn had seen before, tall and thin, with nervous movements, and stocky, with a scar across his cheek. "What the hell?" The stocky one, Daryl, exclaimed, his eyes narrowing angrily. "Jack said no one would be home." Evelyn straightened up, instinctively taking a step back. "What are you doing here?" "This is my house. We're here for the goods," the thin man replied, closing the door behind him. "Jack said everything was ready and we just needed to pick it up." "So that's what the night shift is for," Evelyn said bitterly. "He arranged it so you could pick up the drugs in peace." "Drugs?" The men looked at each other nervously. "What are you talking about, baby?" "Don't pretend," Layla intervened, standing beside her friend. "We know you're selling heroin, and we know Jack's back in business." "Quiet," Daryl shouted, stepping forward. "Shut up if you don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" Layla crossed her arms over her chest. "The only ones who'll be in trouble are the three of you. The police already know." "Layla!" Evelyn looked at her friend in horror. She was bluffing, but she was doing it very convincingly. "Yes," Layla continued, ignoring Evelyn's warning look. "We've already told Jack's probation officer. They'll be here soon." Daryl's face contorted with rage. "You fool! Do you realize what you've done?" He made a sudden movement, and Evelyn was horrified to see the knife in his hand. Layla noticed the weapon too, and stepped back against the garage wall. "Hey, chill," Evelyn whispered, raising her hands. Layla joked. "We didn't tell anyone. I swear." "Shut up!" yelled Daryl, stepping toward them. "You're the reason this whole thing got screwed up. You weren't supposed to be here." "Daryl, calm down," the thin man tried to intervene. "Let's call Jack first, find out." "To hell with Jack," he shouted. "It's his fault. He said the house would be empty." "Look," Evelyn tried to intervene. "We can make a deal. Take your goods and go. We won't say anything to anyone." "Of course you won't," Daryl smirked as he continued to advance. "Because dead men don't talk." "Evie, run!" Layla shouted suddenly and rushed to the door leading into the house. Evelyn rushed after her, but the thin man was faster. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back so hard that she fell to the floor. Out of the corner of her eye, Evelyn saw Daryl catch up to Layla at the door. "No!" Evelyn screamed, trying to get up, but it was too late. Daryl plunged the knife into Layla's back. She cried out and fell to her knees, clutching her chest. Daryl pulled the knife out and stabbed her again, now in the neck. Blood spurted onto the garage floor. "Layla!" Evelyn screamed, trying to break free of the skinny man's grip. "God, no!" Layla collapsed to the floor, her eyes wide with shock, staring into the void. Daryl leaned over her, checking her pulse, then straightened up and nodded to the thin man. "Ready." "You're crazy," he exhaled. "Why the fuck did you kill her?" "What did you say?" Daryl snarled, wiping the knife on his jacket. "Let her go so she could go to the police? We could have..." The thin man hesitated, clenching his hands tighter around Evelyn's shoulders. Shit! Now we got a dead body. We have 2 dead bodies, Daryl corrected coldly, shifting his gaze to Evelyn. We can't let this one live either. No! Evelyn shook her head desperately. Please don't. I won't say anything to anyone, I swear. Wait, Daryl, the thin man said suddenly. We have to call Jack first. It's his girl. Daryl jerked his shoulder irritably, but he pulled out his phone. Okay, but if he doesn't pick her up in the next half hour, I'll deal with her. Skinny sat Evelyn on an old chair in the corner of the garage and tied her hands with a cord he found on the shelf. She didn't resist, shocked by Layla's death and her own situation. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't take her eyes off her friend's body in the pool of blood. Daryl dialed the number and put it on speaker. Jack? We have a problem. What's wrong? Jack's voice sounded tense. Your girl and her friend were in the garage when we came to pick up the merchandise. There was a long silence. What? Jack finally said. Evelyn was supposed to be at work. Well, she's not at work, Daryl snapped at him. She's here, and she knows about the merchandise. Don't touch her, Jack said at once. I'll be right there. Too late, brother. Daryl looked at Layla's body. Her friend was already gone. What? Jack sounded genuinely horrified. Daryl, what have you done? What I had to do, he shouted. They threatened to call the cops. What was I supposed to do? I'll be right there. Jack's voice turned icy. Don't hurt Evelyn. Do you understand? Hurry up, was all Daryl replied, ending the call. The minutes that remained until Jack arrived stretched endlessly. Evelyn sat there, numb with horror. Her eyes were fixed on Layla's face at the moment of impact. Shock, pain, incomprehension. Her thoughts were confused. She couldn't believe that this was really happening. Jack showed up 20 minutes later, barging into the garage like a hurricane. He froze on the doorstep, assessing the situation. Layla's body on the floor, Evelyn tied up in a chair, Daryl with a bloody knife in his hand. What the hell, Daryl? Jack hissed, closing the door behind him. I told you not to touch her. She hasn't been touched, he shrugged. Bye. Jack walked over to Evelyn and squatted down in front of her. Evie, baby, I'm so sorry. Evelyn looked at him with fading eyes. You promised, Jack. You promised you'd change. I know. He lowered his head. I wanted to change. I really did. But when I came out, those guys were waiting for me. They bribed the judge, Evie. It wasn't your father who helped you get out. What? Evelyn couldn't believe her ears. Your father only gave you money for a lawyer, Jack explained. They did the rest. On the condition that I go back into business. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Evelyn said quietly. Enough talk, Daryl intervened. What are we going to do about your girlfriend, Jack? And this one? He nodded at Layla's body. Jack straightened, his face hard. The body needs to be moved out of here. And her car too. And this one? Daryl nodded at Evelyn. Jack turned to her, a look of regret in his eyes. Evie, I can't let you go. You understand that, don't you? You know too much. Jack, please, she whispered. We can go away, far away, start over. You can't get away from these guys, baby. Jack shook his head. They'll find us anywhere. Your father, Evelyn said suddenly. He'll help us. He has friends on the police force. And I'll be behind bars for 20 years, Jack smiled bitterly. For drug trafficking and accessory to murder. Please. The tears ran down Evelyn's cheeks again. I love you, Jack. He walked over and gently stroked her cheek. I love you too, Evie. That's why I'm going to make this quick. You won't feel a thing. She realized what he meant and shook her head. No, Jack, no. It's for the best, baby, he said, pulling a gun out of his pocket. Trust me. Jack, she shouted, trying to break free. Don't do this, please! But his eyes were already empty and cold. He raised the gun and held it to her temple. I love you, Evie, he said. I'm sorry. The last thing Evelyn saw was Jack's finger pulling the trigger. An hour later, a black sedan pulled out of the garage. Jack was behind the wheel, with Daryl next to him and a skinny man in the back seat. In the trunk were 2 bodies wrapped in tarps and a bag of heroin. Where to now? Jack asked, pulling onto the highway. To the warehouse, Daryl answered. We'll get rid of the bodies there, and then we'll go to the boss with the goods." Jack nodded, his face showing no emotion. For that night he had crossed a line from which there was no going back. Now his path was predetermined. Drugs, violence, constant danger. The things he'd been so eager to avoid since returning from prison. But there was no more choice. There never was. The car disappeared into the night, taking with it 2 lives and all hope for a better future. In an empty house on the outskirts of Houston, the phone rang. It was Robert Lewis, checking in to see how his daughter was doing. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered.